who gets to go to the finals, and it's going to be Dusty. We've been following him through the course of the previous rounds, and he is actually up against Tyler on the other side. So both of these players are going to get a chance to try and play for the honor of the first finals in the Rise of the Floodborn format, and gonna get to see how they go about doing that. Dusty very consistently achieving victory with his Amethyst Ruby deck over the course of the last few rounds. 7-0 so far, and the same can be said about Tyler. Going ahead and facing down a Pascal with no response from the other side. So let's see if Dusty can actually form some sort of an aggression with 1-2 start, or if he just goes ahead and quests the Pascal and ends his turn. After inking, see what choice of ink he plays. He actually does have a play to the board and goes ahead and plays a snake and brings back his chameleon, and his assortment of forest animals is standing strong. So did top deck a 1-drop in the form of Olaf, or maybe he didn't want to commit it as early as turn 1 because it wasn't really a functional answer to the likes of something like Pascal, but now plays it just as a good measure against this Mim to have access to a removal spell of some kind. Then we'll get to see if does he actually have a third ink. One would suppose that he'll ink Pascal that he brought back to hand if he doesn't have any other option, and he does actually do so. And what 3-drop does he have access to here? He actually goes ahead and plays Arthur. And the Arthur in combination with this Nim will accelerate Dusty's lore progression. Very important to try and gain as much lore in the early game in these Amethyst matchups, as it normally turns into somewhat of a racing situation during the mid to late game. Tyler goes ahead and plays a Maleficent to draw a card, and then goes ahead and quests for 1, so leaving Olaf actually susceptible to this 3 strength Mim from the other side, but at the same time he might value that point of lore quite highly, and the Mim is actually not going to be in play if Dusty decides to go ahead and increase his lore gain by 2 with the Arthur. The Arthur is actually not going to do that. Instead, Arthur is not going to relinquish board control and use a song to draw 2 cards. So this is a good play from Dusty, making sure that he remains the person in control of the board, while at the same time continuing to develop his ink with the best options possible. Going to get to see if he actually does the common play, which is another Friends from the other side or another Maleficent before actually inking the 4. He does indicate that he has a 4-drop that he wants to play. He's actually inking and then playing 3-drop and then playing Spellbook and activating it as well. So Spellbook in the mirror on turn 4, which is more or less as much on curve as one would expect. And then now he has a commanding position on the board. He has an Arthur. It can't be dealt with by this Maleficent very easily. He does have a Mim left over to be able to quest for 1, and actually the Maleficent gives herself up in order to deal with the Arthur. And still, this Mim is going to gain 1, the Spellbook is going to gain 1, so he's going to get slightly ahead in terms of lore, and we know how important every single point is in the mirror match. Oh, but Tyler doesn't fall that far behind. He has his own Spellbook, actually. So very good on him to see that. And we're going to go ahead and pass it back to Dusty. Is going to go to 5. Doesn't really have any eligible target to a challenge with Maui, so might as well do something like card draw effects instead, or actually continues to press forward with the lore gain by playing Arthur and going ahead and questing for 2 between the book and the mem goes to 5 to the 1, or the 2, yeah, the 2 of Tyler. So slightly ahead is Dusty, and will Tyler actually have an efficient answer against this Arthur? This Arthur feels like if it resolves even a single time, Dusty will be in an incredibly commanding position moving forward. So want to make sure to stop that from occurring as much as possible. The way that Tyler's moving his cards, it doesn't seem like he has the right answers for the situation, unless he does have spellbook number 2. Okay, so 2 spellbook to the count of 1 from Dusty's side. So eventually Tyler is going to achieve some sort of an advantage if he can keep a stable amount of board. But again, Dusty has characters in play that will, with this Arthur, combo into a lot of lore gain on this turn, and this turn might be a little too insurmountable for Tyler, especially if Dusty has a very good follow-up to this. Actually deciding to play second spellbook to match the other spellbooks from Tyler's hand, and this is the deciding factor in game 1. Even though Tyler has 2 books to the 2 books of Dusty, Dusty's already more than halfway through the finish line, and even this Olaf will not be enough to catch him back up, and he still has to deal effectively with this Arthur in hopes of staying remotely on track, and does go ahead and do that. Does go ahead and game 2 up to 5, but it is 5 to the inevitable 13 from the side of Dusty. So we'll get to see if Tyler can cobble together some sort of an offensive that leads him to sort of return to this race, but doesn't seem likely with how many options Dusty has available to him. Dusty has to keep in mind every turn that he wants to tap out, he doesn't get to activate the books, and the books are very important in the race right now, so he does want to do something like only play a 5-costed card at most. And then make sure to activate the books first, just to keep them in mind, and actually has no play, so prioritizing activating the books over playing an entire card for the turn, just how important he knows that it is that he's already ahead in the race and doesn't want to fall behind in activations. So very wise choice from his side. And again, essentially the players performing actions with 2 less ink each because they have to commit to this book so heavily. So still going to see if Tyler has anything to say about this. And he does go ahead and put 2 low commitment ink lore questers in play, while at the same time activating the book twice. So doing his best and keeping up as much as he can, but that 1 Arthur activation in the mid game for Dusty might actually be enough to clinch the victory. We will see. And Tremaine plus ink activate book twice is going to ensure that no funny business happens from the side of Tyler. Does he actually have any ink to use? And he actually can't ink to be able to use the spell book, so goes ahead and only does 1 activation. Should be okay, seeing as Tremaine acts as a 2 questing powered card. Actually, having to use Tremaine on this turn forces Tyler to be unable to actually activate the books. So in a way, Dusty, through his use of Tremaine, stopped Tyler from gaining 2 lore. So that's very good on him. Goes ahead and plays Rabbit, and then ideally he's going to activate these books twice. Or he actually chooses... Oh, okay, so he thinks about it again. So if he does tap out for any 1 card, he will not be able to activate the books, and he thinks twice about his decision and decides, okay, I'm already this far ahead, I might as well try to close it out over the course of the next 2 turns. So we'll get to see, actually, with the Tremaine and the Snake in play, along with the 2 books, this is a burst of 5 questing powers, so it does feel like there's a world here where Tyler can actually seize some amount of advantage. If he gets an effective trade here, if he's able to commit another sort of quester to the table, maybe another one questing power card, and then make this game a 2-turn effort from his side, he could be able to clinch the victory. And it's looking like he goes up 4 to 13. And from 13, he's going to be just short. 3, 4, 5, and 6. He's actually going to be exactly one short unless he can produce a third spell book. So there was a consideration, and it's not going to matter anyway. The Be Prepared is there, and that'll seal Tyler's fate. But there was a world in which if no answers came through from the side of Dusty, Tyler could have gone to 19 if he actually prioritized using the snake for questing power instead of attacking down the rabbit. There could be a scenario where he got to 20. So it was actually a lot closer of a game than it seemed. But again, Dusty had all the resources available to him to be able to clear the field in any way that he liked. He chose Be Prepared, of course, and was able to be prepared and use both book activations to seal the game over the course of 2 turns. So very good game play by both players, and we did get to see equal amount of spell books. But again, that crucial Arthur activation during the middle of the game is what decided the slight advantage for Dusty. And it's just a consequence. It shows how important it is to establish board advantage in the early game in this matchup. So we're going to go ahead and present cuts. I'm going to get to see if Tyler can rally back a victory in game 2. It does feel like these players want to heavily prioritize drawing the spell book. And this makes me think how many players will actually opt into the likes of the sapphire color or something like the steel color in order to be able to efficiently deal with spellbooks and not have to worry about items in general. Again, Ruby, Amethyst, not having any answers to that kind of a card. So definitely a silver bullet weakness, and seeing it in full effect here as it's the most pivotal card in the mirror match. So would like to see how that evolves over the course of the next few events. But for right now, it does seem like this mirror match, both players have a decent understanding of it and know exactly what they have to do. They have to go get spellbook. They have to go get an early start because every single point of lore matters to both of them. And it does seem like both players have at least 2 copies of book, probably 3 would be my guess. And if only 2, can they consistently see multiple copies? So we're going to finish shuffling here. Both players make sure that there are the correct amount of cards in hand. And a Maui is played down, and a Minnie Mouse actually as the opening. So this Minnie being a 1/3 will be able to quest in the early game and will not be dealt with too easily by the likes of something like a Pascal or a 3-drop Maleficent. So quite safe to go ahead and quest with that. And no 1-drop from the side of Dusty. So Dusty is now the one slightly behind in the early game, prioritizing finding that spellbook. We do see in the forefront of his hand, but does not have the very powerful 1-drop. And Tyler actually has the 1-2 punch that Dusty had in game 1 and goes ahead and plays a snake. This snake, incredibly powerful at holding down the board, while at the same time chipping in for 1 lore worth of questing power. And we actually see LaFoe. So matching 2 drops on both sides, although one is a bit more powerful than the other. They both do, in fact, quest for 1. No additional value from the enter effect of LaFoe, although Still nice for Dusty to have something in play at all. Goes ahead and passes turn to Tyler. So going ahead and inking for a third ink, and Tyler didn't really produce much on his turn. Maybe a consequence of an awkward hand. See what he can go ahead and find here. Spreads out his cards. He is at 4. Goes ahead and plays rabbit. Goes in for 1 lore. Passes the turn back. We'll see if skipping turn 3 bites him a little bit. Dusty doesn't really have that much of an impressive strength count on his table, so it might not be easy to punish this lack of a 3-drop from the side of Tyler, but either way, he goes ahead and draws extra cards. We want to see something like what he did in game 1, where he fully tapped out with the spellbook on turn 4. But if he wants to control the field a little bit more, maybe he relinquishes that and instead goes ahead and plays something like his own rabbit, for example. But no, he's going to go LaFaux, and then he's going to actually sing a second time. So this play indicates to me that he could be a couple of options. He does want to interact with the board as much as possible, and at the same time give himself the best ink possible by drawing extra cards. So he actually passes back, and the snake lives another turn. So it might be fine for Dusty to actually leave both the snake and the rabbit in play another extra turn, seeing as Tyler has not found a copy of Spellbook so far, and he's actually going to hesitate to play his 2-drop. Better sequencing here, like he caught himself, is to actually go ahead and gain the 1 lore and then actually recycle the rabbit to draw an extra card. So good on Tyler to catch himself there, understanding that the sequencing is very important in a top 4 match like this one. So good on him, and at the same time goes ahead and plays a Maleficent down and is able to, how does he want to do this? He's able to quest for 1, bounce back, and play on him. Does he actually want to trade with the Maleficent on the other side of the table? And he does. Okay. So a good sequence of events there for Tyler, is able to gain a couple of points of lore and at the same time control the side of Dusty, and at the same time recycle a few of his resources in the form of rabbit. And here's Dusty's payoff to this entire scenario, is going ahead and using Maui to control the table while both the LaFaux actually bring back a little bit of advantage for him. So go ahead and tap everything sideways. And Tyler can now actually go ahead and control the board quite efficiently by dealing with one of these LaFaux. Again, Maui not really that much of a questing threat, as it can't quest at all. So Tyler doesn't actually have to worry about dealing with it. We'll just let Dusty deal with his own card. And I do like recycling these madams back and forth in order to continue to keep them healthy, but at the same time not having them exposed to the Maui on the way back. So good play on Tyler's side. Goes ahead and Lady Tremaines does Dusty. Lady Tremaine not super effective when facing down the rabbit, but again, you have to get through the rabbits to get the lore, I guess. And gonna go back Tyler's way. About that time in the game where Tyler actually starts developing Haymaker cards, but again, this LaFaux actually insulates something like a Lady Tremaine quite well. So Tyler wants to go ahead and use a challenge first before using any of his ink, and chooses for Yzma to actually show back his own card and draw two. So we have seen this play pattern in the past, and Yzma able to accrue a little bit of card advantage for Tyler here, while at the same time holding down the board. So something that Tyler wants to avoid is that Maui being able to trade effectively against Yzma. Yzma wants to trade with something like Lady Tremaine instead. Gets that very powerful 7th ink and passes the turn. So now Yzma lone in play can fall prey to the Lady Tremaine, and so she does. This play, it has happened previously in our previous rounds, and it's just indicative of the fact that it's a little difficult to maintain board advantage against the Ruby Amethyst deck, and because of that, Lady Tremaine actually continues to gain progressive value when it's played on only one card on the opponent's side. But the punish comes through with Be Prepared, so this Be Prepared actually tags a good amount of haymakers from the side of Dusty. So Dusty did lose a total questing power 4 there, and he wasn't able to convert on it, but he follows up the board wipe effect with double book, and that is exactly what he wants to see now. On an empty table, being able to play double book in the mirror match while at parity with the opponent, and he sets himself up perfectly to try to close out the game over the course of the next couple of turns, and that accelerates his game plan dramatically. And Dusty might actually be our first finalist here if he can go ahead and convert this victory. We do see Tyler not sitting down without a fight, goes ahead and takes away one Lorcana from Dusty's side and does develop a book of his own. So goes ahead and draws an additional 2 cards, and hoping desperately to try to be able to match the spellbook activations with Dusty for the remainder of the game. So players just making sure that all ink is correctly counted, and then Dusty will now have the arduous task of separating 2 ink for the entire rest of the game and utilizing it on just these books. Goes ahead and uses activations again over something like developing a threat. So he did do this in the previous game, and he's prioritizing heavily the gain of a lore over something like developing. But it's actually because he actually can't develop any threats, because if you don't have any threats, you can't develop them, because he only has 2 Be Prepared in hand. So definitely prepared for any eventuality is Dusty, but would like to see some top deck of another character card to apply a little bit more pressure in this scenario to Tyler. Tyler won't fall that far behind, as he also has his own copy of Spellbook. So 2-1, not that terrible of a conversion. Does find Maleficent the perfect card in this scenario. As he was running out of cards, he actually gets to cycle a card while also playing a 1 questing power card in play, and actually uses a snake to be able to recycle Maleficent. So a good set of draws for Dusty there, while at the same time developing these 2 books. Again, another 2 activations. So getting tangibly ahead is Dusty at 9 to the opponent Tyler's 6, but it is Tyler's turn. He does get to untap with Snake and Hare. So, and he actually does the full Tremaine chain. And this Tremaine chain does deal with the only card in Dusty's table, while at the same time developing a 2 questing power card, lifting both cards back up with the Fox effect, and then also questing for 2. So Tyler a huge punchback in this mirror match and is able to decently return to parity with what Dusty was doing. So we will shortly return to the video feed in just 1 second. Surely the matchup won't end anytime soon, as is the mirror. But very exciting moment in the game as Tyler actually is able to cement a small lead in the matchup by taking down, with the Tremaine chain, taking down both Dusty's lore count and the last card in play for Dusty, and at the same time questing for 2. So incredibly exciting for Tyler to be able to come back into the game like that. And we do apologize for the technical difficulties. It just is a little bit of a Discord acting up here, but we'll be back shortly with more Lorcana action for you guys. But in the meantime, just taking stock of where we left off, Dusty definitely had 2 spell books in play, and it seemed that after that Be Prepared, he was actually very much prepared to deal with any eventuality by gaining 2 automatic lore every single turn. But Tyler said, no, not going to lose this top 4 match that easily. He actually formulated a situation where he was able to play a low drop Tremaine, be able to take away 1 lore counter from the side of Dusty. Then after that, he was able to get rid of the last snake in play from Dusty's side with the larger Tremaine combo, something that we saw previous rounds be very effective, and an ability to be able to loop both of those with bounce effects in order to both control the opponent's board and the opponent's lore count. So really good job for Tyler to be able to do that. And we'll see how Dusty can bounce back from that situation. An incredibly close game we had there, so we will try to return to that as fast as possible for you guys. In the meantime, we will take a small break while we sort out the technical difficulties, but we'll be right back with you guys.
It's your turn. Let's play.
And we were able to resolve that very quickly. That's very wonderful. Both players were told to wait slightly while we got that sorted out. But now that we are back into the game, we get to see how Dusty can resolve the situation that he was put in by Tyler in the previous turn. And we do see that Dusty goes ahead and draws a couple of extra cards with his Maleficent being recycled again from that Fox on the previous turn, and then is actually facing down Tyler's 2 1 questing power threads. Tyler unable to activate his spellbook on that turn because he did have to commit a good amount of his resources to the Tremaine chain, but slowly but surely, Dusty is acquiring his second victory in this match. And even though Tyler had a fantastic overall play on the previous turn, it might be a little too late for him in this encounter. Get to see how he wants to try to deal with the 3 threats that Dusty played over the course of the last turn. Actually, Be Prepared is one of the only ways to do that. So he goes ahead and plays the very powerful sweeper card, but at the same time, being at parity, only 1 book to 2, and being half the lore that the opponent does have can be quite the difficult scenario. Let's see if this mini can put the entire squad on her back and surf to victory here. It might be a little difficult against the likes of something like a Maleficent or a Lady of Tremaine or basically every card in a Ruby Amethyst, but if we're holding out hope, it is with Mini. So, and Dusty actually looking through the discard pile, assessing the situation, making sure how many copies of possibly Be Prepared have been utilized from the side of Tyler. Dusty's actually not too far up in terms of cards, and he might actually be forced to do something like Be Prepared, just a singular mini in play, which with two spell books in play, it does not equal a bad play at all, as he can actually convert this into two more lore worth of advantage. So I do like this play from here. All he has to do is remain stabilized for 2 turns, and he will have enough to win. But actually, if I'm not mistaken, Tyler is actually at the same amount. Do want to make sure, because if Tyler's actually at 17, if he digs for something like a second spellbook, he will have game on board, and he did draw 4 cards to be able to find it. He does have this Maleficent in play. He was actually, let's see if he falls just a little short. Can he develop another? Okay, so Lady Tremaine does actually keep him afloat in this scenario, while at the same time developing a 1 questing power card and leaving him access to the spellbook, but it shows him the goat, and that spells the game for Dusty. So Dusty, the winner of this one, barely eking out the victory with the 2 books and the goat to bring him up to 20. So a nail biter of a game there for sure. And Tyler fought back as best he could against the 2 spell books that Dusty generated after the Be Prepared was played by Tyler, but was not to be. And congratulations to Dusty for being 8-0. And we'll see if he can convert the 9-0 victory in order to be the undefeated champion for this event. So we will see if that's an eventuality, and we will return shortly.